Good morning, dear students. Welcome to Manoj Beniwal Computer Science classes. Today I'm going to discuss with you the scope of a variable in a Python program. So let's now start our today's lecture. Dear students, today we will discuss the topic scope of a variable in a Python program. Mainly when Python program have functions. So scope, when you study scope, what do you by that? So scope means the chances. When we relate it with career in general sense, we always think that this is related to career. Actually, chances or career, that's the same thing. But here in programming context, scope means the up to which part of the program that variable exists. Exist means that variable have allocated memory. That is being allocated memory. That is it's this variable scope. So now let's take one real example, situation example, and then explain with that. One real situation example will explain it beautifully. Let we go to a tourist place and we buy tickets to enter in that tourist place to different. Let there is a block B, there is a block C, there is a block D, and there is a block E. Let there are different 4 parts within that complete tourist place we can visit. Tickets are provided in this way. Either a ticket is provided for the whole tourist place, either ticket is provided for the individual block. So if you will take a ticket A, so that will be applicable. You can visit the whole touring place. You can see all the things in that tourist place with this ticket. That is applicable in whole tourist place. But if you buy the ticket only for this block B, so you that ticket is only eligible or relevant only in this block. Similarly with C, if you buy ticket for block C, so that is relevant within this block C. Similarly with D and E. So this is the scope of that ticket. This is the scope of that ticket. So in this similar way, if we relate it with our programming, with main function, our program has some functions. Let this is our program P. If this is our program P space, this is our whole complete program P. It has some function F1, it have function F2, it have function like this. Now main, let it have these functions. So now if some variable, let X and Y is in F2, P and Q are in F1, the variable are defined there, and some variable R and S are in this main function. So these variables are applicable in this whole program. They exist, or their scope is in whole program. But these P and Q will exist only when F1 will execute. Otherwise they will not exist. Memory will not be allocated to them. Existence of a variable means the memory is allocated to those variables. So X and Y also exist only when F2 is called, but this R and S will exist during the whole program execution. So these RS and variable which will exist for the whole program execution, complete program execution, they are said to have the global scope, and the variables which exist only within that function X and Y within F2 and P and Q within F1, they are said to have local scope. So here P and Q have local scope within F1 when F1 is executed, and X and Y have local scope within F2. These have within F2 when F2 is called, but R and S have the global scope in the whole program P. So that is called global scope. So based on this for which part of execution they exist in the memory, so the scope of the variable is defined. So based on that, the scope of variable is of 2 types. First is global scope and the second is local scope. See this notes also. The parts of program for which a variable exists during that program's execution, that is called its scope. Mainly there are 2 scopes, global scope and local scope. With one example we try to understand it with the real time example of tourist place where tickets are there, their scope is within a block or in the whole tourist place. So this is global scope and local scope. Now first of all we will discuss the global scope of variable, then we will go to the local scope of variable. See this, the variables which exist during the complete program execution are said to be having the global scope. During the whole program execution they exist, they are said to have the global scope. Note, all variables defined outside all function defined in a program are also global variable. This is also important. See this code, example code here, x assigned 20, this statement is all and above. This is about the function add, and this is about the main code. So declare in the starting, they are also global variables. So this is this note tells that. After that, you can see that this code, in this code, this y variable will be applicable in this is part of main. These two variable y and s are part of main, so they will be accessible in the whole program, and this x is also accessible in the whole program. These may be accessed or these exist in the whole program, but these variables a and b and this sum variable we will discuss in the local scope. They are defined only within this add function scope of this. So here this y, s and x variables are global variables. The variables which have the global scope are set to the global variables. So these are global variables, and these three variables we will see in the local scope part. These are the local variables. See this local scope. This is local scope, about local scope. The variables defined in a function are said to have a local scope within that function defined. Also, there is important note, the formal arguments also have local scope. In our example, a and b formal arguments have local scope. So the variable defined in the body functions body functions header, they are also the they have the local scope. This is very important. They belong to the function value they take from the calling function, but they are part of the their scope is within the that function local scope. Now let's take one example and try to explain the scope here. Global or local, we will call it global environment or local environment, the scope. So first take this example. I have taken a function add, and this add function there is a code sum a plus b return sum, and this takes two arguments a and b. So this is simple function. Now n1 is a variable, n2 is a variable, then sum, this function is called, and then s is printed. So now the execution will take place when first statement will encounter, then it will be 2 and 3 will be ignored, because this is a Python interpreter will came to know that this is a def command. So after seeing def, it will skip the whole function body, so it will skip statement number 2 and 3. It will come to the statement number 4. What will happen when 4 will be executed? When 4 will be executed, the global environment will be created like this, and in global environment a variable n1 will be created, and it will reference to object 30, integer value object 30. After that, when 5 is executed, similarly n2 will be executed, and the global environment will look like this. In global environment there will be two types of variable will be there. In the then when 2, now function call will be there in the 6 statement. So when 6 executed, add function is called, so local environment is created. So now local environment will be created like this. I have shown all variable in it, but right now there is no variable, only local environment is created. But when the function call will go here, so a and b will get created. So a and b will get created like this, and they will take value from n1 and n2. Now that function takes variable sum in the statement number 2. So now sum will be created in the local scope, and sum will take value 90, the addition of these two. Then it will return the sum, and then when the statement 6 will executed again, x will be created in the global scope. But when this control returns from the function to here, the control will return, so then this local scope will get vanished. Now only global scope will remain, and after that this 6 variable s will be created, and s variable will create in the global scope. Then it will be printed, and then the program execution is over, and the global scope also get vanished. In this way the whole program works. So global scope and this local scope works in this way. So this was all about global scope and local scope. And now let take one example of the Python program also. The same code is written here, and this there is add function, some variable here, and then n1 return this, and n2 this value will be taken on keyboard. N1 and n2 are passed, they will be copied to a and b, and sum will be printed, and then sum will return, and then it will print in s. So output will be here, what value will give, that will be the output. So now we will run it. It will ask for two values. Let me give 45, and then we give 56, and we enter. So this output is 101. When we check in this Python program, the variable n1, n2 and s are in global scope, and variable a and b and the sum are in local scope. Similarly, we have explained in the theory also, in the theoretical part also, from the notes we have already explained this part. So this will take place in this way. Now let also try on the code that we want to access a variable here, which is not part of global scope. I will try to run this code. What will it give? So it will ask for a number. I will give the number. I will give the second number. Now it is giving error. S1 is not defined because S1 variable scope is in local scope within the function, but we are trying to use it in the main code. That's why this variable is not defined here. It will exist only when the function is executing. So because this variable have only local scope, we are using in the global scope. That's why it is giving error. So in this way we can understand the basic concepts of this global and local scope. So this was for the scope of variable. There are two types of scopes, global scope and local scope. We take one example and theoretically we try to understand it. Then we take a programming example and also try to understand from it. So in the next lecture we will see the scope resolution of the variable in Python, where functions are used.